3 years married, never touched, until she discovered his real plan.
Have you ever wondered how long you can live with someone without them actually touching you? I'm not talking about quick hugs in public or that mechanical kiss on the cheek before bed. I'm talking about real touch, intimacy, feeling like there's another living person beside you. I spent 3 years asking myself that question every morning as I woke up next to a millionaire husband who barely knew my full name. My name is Hana Kim, and I should have realized from the start that something was terribly wrong. But when you grow up in a traditional Korean family in Vancouver, where marriages are still business arrangements between families, you learn to swallow your doubts and smile for the cameras. That's exactly what I did on my wedding day to Min Jae Choi, heir to the Hansong capital fortune. It was March 2022. Fine snow fell over the historic streets of Gastown as I walked down the aisle of Christ Church Cathedral in a dress that cost more than my mother made in a year. Min Jae stood at the altar, impeccable in his Armani tuxedo, with that polite smile I'd learned to hate. He didn't smile at me that day. He smiled at the 300 guests, at the cameras, at the future he was about to secure through that marriage. "You look beautiful," he whispered when I reached the altar. There was no warmth in those words. It was like hearing a CEO reading a corporate script. I should have run right then, should have dropped that bouquet of white peonies and run out into the snow. But I didn't, because in my family, you don't disappoint your parents, you don't shame your name. You marry, you smile, and you endure. The first few months were strange, but not alarming. Min Jae worked late at the Hansong Capital office downtown. I decorated our Yelltown penthouse, attended pottery classes I wasn't interested in, and ate dinner alone most nights. When he came home around 11, he'd go straight to his office or collapse into bed fully dressed. "Tough day at work," he'd say every time I tried to start a conversation. "You understand, right? We're expanding into Asian markets. It's a lot of pressure." And I understood, or at least I pretended to, because that's what good Korean wives did, right? They understood. They waited. They didn't complain when their husbands wouldn't touch them. But then came our first Valentine's Day, February 2023, almost a year married. I'd prepared a complete Korean dinner, galbijim, japchae, homemade kimchi that took 3 weeks to ferment. There were candles, expensive wine, even new lingerie I'd bought at Holt Renfrew. Min Jae came home at 9, looked at the set table, and said, "I'm not hungry. I ate something at the office." He didn't even look at me, didn't notice the red dress, didn't see that I'd spent the entire day cooking. He just grabbed his laptop and went to the office. I stood there, alone, watching those candles burn, and something inside me cracked. It didn't break completely yet, but it cracked. That night, I started paying real attention. I started noticing the small things I'd been ignoring. The fact that Min Jae never left his phone unlocked, that he always locked the office door, that he'd get strange calls and step out onto the balcony to answer them. And that's how I discovered my husband wasn't just cold. He was a criminal. A con artist orchestrating the biggest inheritance fraud scheme Vancouver had ever seen. And I, unwittingly, had become his perfect accomplice. It started with a locked drawer. I know. You're thinking I shouldn't have been snooping, but when your husband acts like you're invisible for 3 years, when he flinches every time you accidentally touch him, when he looks at you like you're a piece of furniture he regrets buying, you start asking questions, and sometimes those questions lead you to locked drawers in home offices. It was April, almost our first anniversary. Min Jae had gone to Seattle for a week-long business trip. At least that's what he told me. Meetings with potential investors, he'd said, kissing my forehead in that cold, performative way he always did. The second his Uber pulled away from our building, I went straight to his office. The locked drawer wasn't hard to open. I'd watched enough YouTube tutorials during those lonely evenings to pick a basic lock with a bobby pin. Inside, there were folders, dozens of them. Legal documents with names I didn't recognize, bank statements, property deeds. And then I found it. A document that made my blood freeze. Amended last will and testament of Choi Sang-woo. Sang-woo, Min-jae's uncle, the real money behind Hang Sung Capital, the man everyone whispered about at family gatherings, the one who'd built an empire from a single shipping container business in Busan and turned it into a billion-dollar international holding company. I'd met him exactly once at our wedding. He'd looked at me with these intense, dark eyes and said, "Take care of my nephew, Hana. He needs someone good in his life." I remembered thinking it was a weird thing to say. Now, staring at that will, I understood why. The document was dated 3 months ago, January 2023. It stated that upon Sang-woo's death, his entire fortune, every single asset, every property, every offshore account, would go to Min-jae. But here's the thing, there was a clause, a very specific clause. Min-jae would only inherit if he was married at the time of Sang-woo's death. If he was divorced or single, everything would go to charity. My hands shook as I read it again and again. The pieces started falling into place like dominoes. Our arranged marriage, the timing, Min-jae proposing exactly 2 weeks after his uncle's lung cancer diagnosis, the way he'd pushed for a quick wedding saying, "When you know," with that practiced charm that fooled everyone but me. I wasn't his wife. I was his insurance policy. But it got worse, so much worse. Underneath that will, there was another document, a fake one. Same format, same legal language, but dated 5 years earlier. In this version, there was no marriage clause, just a straightforward inheritance. Everything goes to Min-jae, no strings attached. My husband wasn't just using me. He was planning to forge his uncle's will. I heard a sound behind me. My heart stopped. I spun around, document still in my hands, expecting to see Min-jae standing there. But the apartment was empty. It was just the building settling, pipes creaking, Vancouver rain starting to hit the windows. I was alone. But for how long? I took photos, every single page. My hands were shaking so bad that half of them came out blurry, but I didn't care. I documented everything and sent it to my personal email, then deleted the sent folder on the phone. Then I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it, locked the drawer, and walked out of that office like I'd just witnessed a murder. Because, in a way, I had. The murder of any illusion I'd been clinging to about my marriage. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in our king-size bed, Min-jae's side empty and cold, and thought about my options. I could go to the police, but with what? Photos of documents that could be explained away? Oh, my nephew and I were just reviewing my will, making sure everything was in order. I could confront Min-jae, but he'd just deny it, probably lock me out of the office, maybe even kick me out of the apartment. Korean families don't believe wives over sons, especially not wives with no money, no career, no power. Or I could do something else, something they'd never expect. I could play the game better than they did. The next morning, I made a decision. If Min-jae needed a wife to inherit $1 billion fortune, I'd be the best damn wife Vancouver had ever seen. I'd smile wider, cook better meals, attend every family gathering, play the perfect daughter-in-law. And while I did that, I'd gather evidence, real evidence, the kind that couldn't be explained away. But I'd need help. And there was only one person who had the power, the resources, and the motivation to take down Min-jae. His uncle, Sang-woo. I found Sang-woo's office address in Min-jae's contacts. It wasn't at Hang Sung Capital headquarters. It was in an old brick building in Gastown, above a Korean BBQ restaurant that had been there since the 70s. No security, no reception desk, just a door with a small brass plate that read S. Choi, Private Office. I knocked 3 times. No answer. I tried the handle. It was unlocked. The office was smaller than I expected. Dark wood furniture, walls covered in photographs, old shipping manifests framed like art. There was a desk by the window, papers scattered everywhere, and sitting behind it, looking frailer than I remembered, was Sang-woo. "Hana," he said, not even looking up from whatever he was reading. "I was wondering when you'd come." My heart dropped. You were expecting me? "Please sit." He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. "Would you like tea? I have a very good oolong my sister sent from Seoul." I didn't want tea. I wanted answers. But this was a Korean elder, so I said, "Yes, thank you," and waited while he poured from a porcelain pot that looked older than both of us combined. "You found the documents," Sang-woo said. It wasn't a question. "How did you—" "I've known Min-jae his entire life. I practically raised him after his father died. I know how he thinks, how he plans, and I know he's a snake." He took a sip of tea. "But he's my sister's only son, and family is complicated. Did you know he married me just to inherit your fortune?" Of course I knew. I wrote the marriage clause specifically to test him, to see if he'd be honest, if he'd prove me wrong about him. Sang-woo smiled sadly. He didn't. And the fake will? A surprise, actually. I didn't think even Min-jae would go that far. He set down his cup. "But that's why you're here, isn't it? To warn me." I took a deep breath. "I'm here to propose a deal." Sang-woo leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "I'm listening." I looked him straight in the eyes. "Min-jae is planning to forge your will. When you die, and I'm sorry to be blunt, but when you die, he's going to substitute the real will with the fake one. No marriage clause, no conditions. He'll inherit everything, divorce me immediately, and I'll be left with nothing. Just like he planned from the beginning. And you want me to do what, exactly?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "Change your will. For real this time. Leave it to someone Min-jae can't touch, someone he can't manipulate or intimidate." "And who would that be?" I swallowed hard. "Me." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Sang-woo just stared at me, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he started to laugh. Not a mean laugh, a genuine, deep belly laugh that shook his whole frame. "You?" he said, wiping tears from his eyes. "You want me to leave my billion-dollar fortune to a woman I've met exactly twice? 3 times, including now." He laughed harder. "Oh, Hana, I like you. I really do. But you're asking me to disinherit my only nephew, the son of my dead sister, for a girl I barely know? I'm not asking you to leave me the fortune," I said quickly. "I'm asking you to leave it to a trust, a foundation, something that will actually do good in the world instead of funding Min-jae's yacht collection." Sang-woo's smile faded. "You've thought about this. Every night for the past week." He studied me for a long moment. "There's something you're not telling me. What is it?" I hesitated. This was it, the moment where I either committed fully or walked away. I want a divorce, but Min-jae won't let me go, not while you're still alive. As long as that marriage clause exists, I'm trapped. But if you change the will, remove the marriage requirement entirely, I'm free. And Min-jae gets nothing. Min-jae gets what he deserves. Sang-woo poured himself more tea. "You know, my nephew told me you were simple, sweet, obedient, a perfect traditional Korean wife." He looked up at me. "He was wrong about you. Is that a bad thing?" "It's the best thing I've heard in years." He opened a drawer, pulled out a legal pad. "But I have a counteroffer." "What kind of counteroffer?" "I don't want to leave my fortune to a faceless foundation. I want to leave it to someone who'll use it right. Someone who understands family, loyalty, and justice." He wrote something on the pad. "Someone who's smart enough to outsmart my nephew." "I told you I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" "Freedom." Freedom costs money, Hana. In this world, everything costs money. He slid the legal pad across the desk. On it, he'd written a number. $300 million. That's your buyout, Songwoo said. You help me expose Min-jae's fraud. You testify if needed. You play along with whatever plan we come up with. In exchange, when I die, which, according to my doctors, will be in about 18 months, you get $300 million. Not from Min-jae, from me. A direct payment written into a trust that he can't touch. Ever. My head was spinning. Why? Why would you do this for me? Because I'm dying, and I'm tired of watching my family destroy itself over money. Because Min-jae needs to learn that actions have consequences. And because he paused. Because 40 years ago, I was in an arranged marriage too. To a woman I didn't love. And I made her life hell. I can't undo that, but maybe I can help you avoid the same fate. I looked at that number. $300 million. Enough to disappear. To start over. To never have to depend on anyone ever again. What do you need me to do? Songwoo smiled. First, we're going to make Min-jae think everything is going exactly according to his plan. You'll be the perfect wife. Attentive, loving, supportive. He can't suspect you know anything. I can do that. Second, we're going to set a trap. A way to catch him red-handed with the forged will. I have lawyers, investigators, people who can make sure every detail is documented. Okay. And third, Songwoo's smile turned darker. You're going to meet my brother, Junwoo. I didn't know you had a brother. Most people don't. Junwoo and I had a falling out 30 years ago. He left Korea, moved to Seattle, built his own empire. Real estate, tech investments, venture capital. He's worth more than I am. What does he have to do with this? Junwoo is dangerous, ruthless. He doesn't follow rules, doesn't care about family loyalty. He's exactly the kind of man who could protect you when I'm gone. Songwoo leaned forward. And between you and me, he's always hated Min-jae. Called him a snake since he was a teenager. This would be the perfect revenge. You want me to... what? Marry your brother after you die? I want you to have options. Junwoo's 62, never been married, no children. He's lonely, and he respects strength. You show him you can take down Min-jae, and he'll be your strongest ally. I sat back in my chair trying to process everything. This sounds insane. Welcome to the Choi family. Songwoo raised his teacup. So, do we have a deal? I thought about Min-jae, about 3 years of cold shoulders and lonely dinners, about being used as a pawn in someone else's inheritance game, about waking up every morning next to a man who saw me as nothing more than a signature on a marriage certificate. I picked up my own teacup and clinked it against Sangwoo's. Deal. The next 6 months were the strangest of my life. I became an actress, playing the role of devoted wife while secretly meeting with Sangwoo's lawyers, documenting every suspicious phone call, every locked drawer, every late-night meeting Min-jae thought I didn't notice. I smiled at family dinners while wearing a wire. I organized birthday parties while photographing documents. I was a spy in my own marriage. Min-jae didn't suspect a thing. He was too arrogant, too confident in his plan. He actually started being nicer to me, probably thinking he needed to keep me happy until Sangwoo died. He bought me jewelry, took me to expensive restaurants, even pretended to be interested when I talked about the pottery classes I'd quit months ago. You seem happy, he said one night over dinner at Blue Water Cafe. I like seeing you like this. I smiled. I've just been thinking about our future, about what we'll do with all that money when your uncle passes. Min-jae's fork paused halfway to his mouth. When he... Hana, that's morbid. Is it? He's dying, Min-jae. The doctors gave him 18 months. That was 8 months ago. We should probably start planning. I took a sip of wine. Unless you've been planning? His eyes narrowed just slightly. What do you mean? Nothing, just that I want to be prepared. I want to be a good wife, support you through this difficult time. He relaxed. You're right, sorry. It's just hard to talk about. Sang-woo raised me. He's like a father. A father he was planning to rob blind. I wanted to throw my wine in his face. Instead, I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I know, honey. We'll get through this together. That night, I texted Sang-woo. Hooks set, ready for phase 2. Phase 2 was meeting Jun-woo. He flew in from Seattle on a Thursday afternoon in October. Sang-woo arranged for us to meet at a private lounge in the Fairmont Pacific Rim, neutral territory where Min-jae would never think to look. I wore a simple black dress, minimal makeup. I wanted to look serious, professional, not like some gold digger trying to charm her way into another fortune. Jun-woo was late. I sat there for 20 minutes watching the Vancouver rain streak down the floor-to-ceiling windows, wondering if this was all a mistake. Then the door opened. If Sang-woo was frail and gentle, Jun-woo was the opposite. He walked in like he owned the place. Tailored Tom Ford suit, silver hair slicked back, a presence that made every head turn. He wasn't handsome in a conventional sense. He was dangerous, the kind of man who'd made enemies and won. Hana, he said, sitting down across from me without offering to shake hands, your brother tells me you're planning to destroy your nephew. Direct. I liked that. Your brother tells me you've hated Min-jae for years. Hate is a strong word. I simply think he's a waste of resources. Jun-woo signaled to a waiter. Scotch, meat, and whatever the lady wants. Water is fine. Water, he smirked. Sang-woo said you were different. I'm starting to see why. The waiter left. Jun-woo leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a business opportunity he was considering investing in. So, you married Min-jae for money, he married you for inheritance, and now you're both screwing each other over. Do I have that right? I didn't marry him for money. Our parents arranged it. Even worse, you married him out of obligation. He shook his head. At least gold diggers have ambition. I felt my face flush. I'm 27 years old. I did what my family expected. That doesn't make me weak. Doesn't make you smart either. And yet, here I am, about to take down your snake of a nephew while you sit in Seattle doing nothing. Jun-woo's eyebrows raised. Then he laughed, loud and genuine. Oh, I like you. I see why Song was willing to give you $300 million. He leaned forward. But let's be clear about something. My brother is dying. In a few months, he'll be gone. Min-jae will contest the will, tie up the money in court for years. You'll need protection, resources, legal firepower. He paused. You'll need me. And what do you get out of this? I get to watch Min-jae lose everything. That's payment enough. I don't believe you. Nobody helps for free. What do you really want? Jun-woo's smile disappeared. He set down his scotch and looked at me with those cold, calculating eyes. I want a wife. My stomach dropped. Excuse me? I'm 62. No children, no heirs. I've built an empire, and when I die, it all goes to charity because I have no family worth leaving it to. You're smart, you're ruthless enough to take down Min-jae, and you're young enough to manage my estate for the next 40 years. We get married, you inherit everything when I die, and in exchange, you use that money to destroy the Choi family from the inside. Revenge for both of us. I couldn't breathe. You're insane! I'm practical. Song-woo's money will keep you comfortable. My money will make you powerful. He finished his scotch. Think about it. Doors open for 6 months. After that, offer expires. He stood up, straightened his suit jacket, and walked out without another word. I sat there alone, watching the rain, wondering what I'd gotten myself into. Song-woo wanted me to expose Min-jae, Jun-woo wanted me to marry him, Min-jae wanted me to stay obedient until his uncle died. And me? I just wanted to be free. But freedom, I was learning, always came with a price. 3 weeks later, Song-woo collapsed at his office. Heart attack. He was rushed to Vancouver General, and for 48 hours, we didn't know if he'd survive. Min-jae was devastated. Or at least, he pretended to be. He sat by his uncle's hospital bed, holding his hand, crying. I watched him from the doorway, and I saw it. The moment Song-woo's eyes opened, the moment the doctor said he'd survive, I saw the flash of disappointment on Min-jae's face. Just for a second. Then it was gone, replaced with relief and joy. But I'd seen it, and I knew. He wanted his uncle dead. That night, back at our apartment, Min-jae got drunk. Really drunk. He sat on our balcony, staring at the Vancouver skyline, bottle of soju in hand. Do you ever think about what you do with unlimited money? I sat down next to him. Sometimes, I'd leave. Just fucking leave. Vancouver, Korea, all of it. Buy an island somewhere. Maldives, maybe? Just disappear. He took another drink. No more family obligations, no more board meetings, no more pretending. Pretending what? He looked at me. For the first time in 3 years, he really looked at me. Pretending I want any of this? The company? The responsibility? The marriage? He laughed bitterly. Sorry, that came out wrong. Did it? I never wanted to get married, Hana, but Song-woo, he wouldn't give me anything unless I settled down, became respectable, so I did what I had to do. You mean you married me as part of a business deal? We both did. Let's not pretend this was ever about love. He was right, but hearing him say it out loud still hurt. So what happens when Song-woo dies? Do you divorce me immediately, or do you wait a respectful amount of time? Min-jae smiled. You're smarter than you look. Thanks. I'll wait a year, maybe 2. Then we'll have an amicable split. I'll give you enough money to disappear. You can go back to Korea, find a nice guy who actually wants a wife. He stood up, wobbling slightly. Deal? I looked up at him, this man I'd wasted 3 years of my life on, and I smiled. Deal. He went inside. I stayed on the balcony, pulled out my phone, and texted Junwoo. I accept your offer. Let's destroy him. The reply came 30 seconds later. Welcome to the family. Song-woo died on January 3rd, 2024, peacefully, in his sleep, exactly 18 months after his lung cancer diagnosis. The funeral was enormous. Hundreds of people, everyone from Vancouver's Korean community, business partners from Seoul, politicians, philanthropists. Min-jae played the grieving nephew perfectly. He even cried. I stood beside him, the dutiful wife, and waited. The will reading was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Song-woo's lawyer, a sharp woman named Catherine Song, gathered the family in a conference room at her downtown office. Min-jae sat at the head of the table. I sat beside him. And at the opposite end, uninvited and unexpected, sat Junwoo. What are you doing here? Min-jae demanded. I'm family, Junwoo said simply. I have a right to be here. Catherine cleared her throat. Shall we begin? She opened a leather folder. The last will and testament of Choi San-woo, dated December 15, 2023. To my nephew Min-jae Choi, I leave my regrets. You had every opportunity to be honest, to honor family, to prove me wrong about you. You failed. To my brother Junwoo Choi, I leave my apologies. You were right about everything. And to my niece-in-law Hana Kim Choi, I leave everything else. The room exploded. Min-jae jumped to his feet. That's not the will. That's not... He promised me. Promised you what? Catherine asked calmly. That you could forge his signature and steal his fortune? Min-jae went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. We have recordings, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. Phone calls? Meetings with lawyers about creating fake documents? Conversations about how long you'd wait after Songwoo died before filing the forged will? I pulled out my phone, placed it on the table. Want me to play them? Min-jae's hands were shaking. You recorded me? For 6 months, every shady conversation, every plan you made. I stood up. Songwoo knew everything. He changed his will specifically to protect it from you, and now you get nothing. This won't stand up in court. I'll fight this. Junwoo laughed. With what money? You're broke, nephew. Your personal accounts are empty. Your credit cards are maxed. You've been living off Songwoo's generosity for years, and now he's gone. Catherine slid a document across the table to me. Mrs. Choi, you are now the sole heir to the Hansong Capital fortune. Estimated value $1.3 billion. Congratulations. I picked up the document. It felt surreal. Thank you. Min-jae was crying now. Real tears. Hana, please. We're married. We can share this. I'll change. I promise I'll change. We're not married. Catherine filed divorce papers this morning, citing fraud, emotional abandonment, and irreconcilable differences. You'll be served tomorrow. You can't do this. I already did. I looked at Junwoo. He nodded. Time for the final move. And just so you know, I'm getting married again next month. Min-jae blinked. To who? Junwoo stood up, walked around the table, and stood next to me. To me. Min-jae's face went through about 5 different expressions. Confusion, realization, horror, rage, and finally, defeat. You planned this together? Songwoo planned it. We just executed it. Your uncle knew you were a snake. He spent the last year of his life making sure you'd never get a penny of his money. And the best part? Hana is going to inherit my fortune too when I die. The entire Choi family wealth. Everything our grandfather built in Busan, everything your father died protecting. It's all going to her. A girl from a nobody family who was smart enough to play the game better than you. I picked up my bag. The apartment is yours for another week. After that, my lawyers will have it emptied. Don't take anything that's not yours. We have cameras. I walked out of that conference room with Junwoo beside me. Behind us, I could hear Min-jae screaming, throwing chairs, destroying everything in reach. Security would handle him. In the elevator going down, Junwoo said, "You know this marriage is real, right? I'm not doing this as a favor. I expect a real wife." I looked at him. I know. And when I die, probably in 10 years if my doctors are right, you will inherit everything. But those 10 years won't be easy. I'm demanding, difficult. I have enemies. So do I now. He smiled. Good, then we'll get along fine. We walked out into the Vancouver rain. A town car was waiting. Junwoo opened the door for me and I got in. As we pulled away from the building, I saw Min-jae in the window, 5 stories up, watching us leave. I didn't wave. 6 months later, I married Junwoo in a small ceremony in Seattle. No family, no guests, just us, a judge, and 2 witnesses we pulled off the street. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was a business arrangement, just like my first marriage. But this time, I was the one with the power. Junwoo kept his promise. He was demanding, difficult, and absolutely ruthless in business. But he was fair. He taught me how to run his companies, how to negotiate, how to spot a snake like Min-jae from a mile away. And slowly, something unexpected happened. We became friends. Not lovers. We had separate rooms, separate lives. But friends. Partners. Two people who understood that love was optional, but respect was essential. Min-jae tried to contest the will. He hired lawyers, filed lawsuits, dragged the case through courts for 2 years. He lost every single time. Eventually, he ran out of money, had to sell the apartment, moved back in with his mother. Last I heard, he was working at a Seoul startup making $60,000 a year. I'm not sorry for him. Junwoo died 3 years after we married. Heart attack, same as his brother. I was with him when it happened, holding his hand. His last words were, "Don't waste it, the money. Use it for something good." I inherited everything, $2.4 billion, more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I kept my promise. Half went to charity, hospitals, schools, programs for women escaping bad marriages. The other half I kept, invested, grew. I'm 33 now, richer than I ever imagined, more powerful than Min-jae ever was. And I'm free. I never remarried, never had to. I live in a penthouse in Vancouver, the same city where this all started. Sometimes I see Min-jae around town. He's older now, grayer, broken. He doesn't look at me anymore, doesn't have the courage. People ask me if I regret it, marrying Min-jae, getting tangled up in the Choi family drama, becoming the person I had to become to survive. I don't. Because I learned something important through all of this. When you're trapped in a cage, whether it's an arranged marriage or a family obligation or a society that tells you to be quiet and obedient, you have 2 choices. You can accept the cage, or you can burn it down. I chose fire,